Okay, let's start out with the definition here called the point slope formula. So the point slope formula. And think about when we were looking at the slope intercept formula. The slope intercept formula, it had a slope and intercept in the formula. It just stood out there and just popped out at you. You had a slope and intercept. So here we have a point slope formula. So in the formula, there's going to be one point and the slope. And so if we have that, we can write our equation. This is for a line given by this thing. And every time you work a problem like this, you're going to want to write this formula every single time. It's y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. And this is actually just a variation of the slope formula. If you were to divide this x minus x1 over here, then you'd have the y minus y divided by x minus x is equal to m. So it's just a variation of that. I'm not going to go into how that was formed, but just as long as, hopefully to help you relate, as long as you can understand that a little bit. It's given by this, where m is the slope. And again, pause the video and recall what the formula of m is. It's y minus y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. And the point x1 comma y1 is a point on the line. Okay, so we're going to be using this a lot. Now there is, when you're working with these problems, you normally want to start in the point slope formula. So we'll just put a little star here. Normally start with point slope. I'm not going to write formula, but you normally start with the point slope, and then you'll plug in what you know, and then simplify, and you'll always wind up in slope intercept form. Because our answers at the end of our examples, they're going to want our answers to be in slope intercept form. If you try to start plugging things into slope intercept form, you're going to get some funky answers. So always start here, and then it will reduce down to the slope intercept form. So normally we'll start with the point slope, and it will naturally, and naturally I mean by us doing some algebra, reduce to slope intercept. And that will make some more sense once I go over an example or two. Okay, pause the video if you need some time here. All right, so let's look at an example now. Example 1. Find an equation of a line passing through the point 2 comma negative 3 with slope negative 4. So that's the setup. And then write your answer in slope-intercept. All right, that last line is what I just wrote on the board. It will help you there. The star on what I just wrote. I said, always start in the point slope form, and then eventually after we plug in and do some algebra, we'll wind up in the slope-intercept form. So it tells you to write your answer in slope-intercept form, but don't start there. We'll get there, all right? We want to always start these using the point slope, which is y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. So always start there. And then once we have our formula written, now we know what we're missing or what we need to find or what we need to label. All right? So let's see. We need a y1, we need an m, and we need an x1. So let's label those things. And pause the video and you give it a try. So here I have an x and a y. So those can be my x1 and y1s. And then I need an m. M is my slope, and it tells me right here. So -4 is my m. So now let's just plug those in. This y stays y, and we're going to leave it y. Nothing's going to get plugged in there. y1, we said, was -3. Parentheses around that 3 is important. It's not necessary, but as long as you make sure that you include both of these negatives here, because these two negatives are going to make a positive. So the parentheses aren't necessary. Just make sure you include that negative. But I include the parentheses because it helps me to keep track of what's what. And then m, we said, was -4. And then this x stays x. The x1 is what we want to replace, and we said it was 2. Now we're on a roll. At this point, it's just algebra and simplifying. So let's get going. So y minus a -3, these two negatives, negative times a negative is a positive, so y plus 3 is equal to, and then on the right side, we have this -4 times x minus 2. So this -4 has to be distributed into both of these terms. So you take this -4 and multiply it to the x. That gives you -4x. And then you take the -4 and you multiply it to the -2. That's the key here. -4 times -2 is a +8. That's an easy one to get fooled on. Be careful there. All right, now we want to write our answer in slope-intercept form. So if you don't remember off your head, or if you're shaky about where you need to wind up, write the slope-intercept form down. Slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. So we start in point slope, we plug in, do algebra, and we're going to wind up here in slope-intercept form. So notice here in slope-intercept form, the way we get there is all we want to do is solve for y and get y by itself. So we're almost there. All we have to deal with is this +3. So let's do that now. Subtract both sides by 3. So on the left side, I'm left with y. When I subtract 3 over here, 8 minus 3 is +5. So that would be my answer in slope-intercept form. All right, so that's one type of example that you'll see. It will get a little more, I don't want to say complicated, but there's problems where there's more work involved, and let's get into those now. All right, example 2. Use point slope to write an equation of the line passing through the points 4, -6 and -1, 2. And this is always going to be you always want to write it in slope-intercept form. So write in slope-intercept. All right. That's always going to be the case. I may not write it every single time. I may just say it out loud. But we're going to want to write in slope-intercept form. That's the convention. Because it's nice and pretty, and the slope and intercept just pop out at us. All right. So how do we always start? If you don't know how we always start, you need to pause and think about it. All right. We always start by writing the formula. So we're given these 2 points. That's all we're given. And it says use the point slope to write an equation in slope-intercept. So the point slope, we have to know what that is. That's where we're starting. That's y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. So now off the bat, I need a y1, an m, and an x1. So let's label those. Run into a problem here because I have 2 points. So which one of these do I label x1 and which one in y1? Well, it doesn't matter here actually. So just pick whichever one you want and label it x1 and y1. x1, y1. All right. So we can plug those in. Let's go ahead and do that. And you're going to see we're going to run into another problem. Some of you may see it already. y1 is -6, so there's 2 negatives there. That's equal to m. Well, there's my problem. I don't have an m. So I don't know what it is, but let's write it in there and let's keep plugging in what I know so far. X minus x1, which we said was 4. Okay, we're almost there if it wasn't for this m. So what do we have to do? How do we figure out what m is? Well, write the formula for m and then see if you can figure it out from there. So let's write it and see if something pops in our mind of what to do. So we have, let's say m is equal to, so it's the rise over the run. So it's the rise, which is the change in y values. That's on top. So it's y2 minus y1. And then it's the run, the change in the x values. So the x is x2 minus x1. All right. Well, I have an x1 and a y1, but I don't have an x2 and y2. But luckily, the problem gives me another point. So I can go ahead and label those x2 and y2. And I could have went ahead and labeled these at the very, very beginning when I labeled x1 and y1. But I just wanted to show you, I want you to be able to think through these and see where things come from and not just regurgitate. So, y2 is 2 minus y1, which is -6. So be careful, 2 negatives again. This minus sign is part of the equation, and then I'm plugging in a -6 there. Then x2 is just -1. Minus is part of the equation, and then a 4, +4. I simplify this, I get 2 plus 6, which is 8 on the top, and then -5 on the bottom. So your answer is -8/5. So m is equal to -8/5. So that's what we plug into our answer now. So here we get y minus a -6, and you could go ahead and simplify this, but I'm just going to keep it like this just so it follows in your notes a lot easier, but just know you can go ahead and make that a positive. So this is negative 8/5 x minus 4. All right, now let's do some simplifying. Y plus 6 is equal to, and we have to distribute this negative 8/5. We have to distribute this whole thing into each of these terms, the x and the 4. So I get minus 8/5 x, and then negative 8/5 times negative 4 is a positive 32/5. All right, and then we're almost there. We have to subtract that 6 over now. So it's a lot of work, but you will see these types of problems on the test. So I'm going to come back up here, and I said you're going to see these types of problems on the test. This one's going to be a little more difficult because now we have this fraction over here that we're going to have to deal with. So I'm going to rewrite it over here. All right, and then subtract 6 to both sides. Y is equal to negative 8/5 x plus 32/5, and then the minus 6. All right, so to be able to combine and subtract these two things, we need to find a common denominator. So you're going to have to do a little side work to be able to figure that out. And unfortunately, my board space here, I'm going to have to erase a little bit. Just erase this part. So I'm just going to work on, I just want to show you some side work of how to figure this out. All right? 32/5 minus 6. So we have to get a common denominator between these two terms. The denominator on this term is 5. The denominator on this term is, well, if it's not written, then there's a 1 there. All right, because 6 divided by 1 is 6. We just don't write the 1 because it's redundant. So how do I need to get a common denominator here. How do I make this 1 become a 5? When I say make it, what do I need to multiply it by? 5. So if I multiply the bottom by 5, what I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. So I multiply top and bottom by 5. And this will square everything up. 32 over 5 minus 6 times 5 is 30. And then the bottom 1 times 5 is 5. And then you can combine, now that you have the same denominator, you can just subtract them. So you get 32 minus 30 over 5. So you just combine the denominators since they're the same now. And that's equal to 2/5, positive 2/5. And that will be your, just plug that in over here. So negative 8/5 x plus 2/5.